Welcome back, Junkies on 106.7 The Fan on a Football Friday. Going to give you our fatties coming up at 9:25. Want your winners at 9:25. We like your pick. We'll hook you with some Aerosmith tickets. Not a bad deal. We will switch things up. 9 o'clock, Matt Williams, your Nationals manager, joins us. But in studio, we have the executive director of the NFLPA, DeMaurice Smith. And one of the things that has come up recently is Roger Goodell put in place a new policy basically on the heels of the Ray Rice criticism, where domestic violence, assaults, they're going to net you 6 games. But people are wondering, when does it net you 6 games in terms of suspension? Is it upon conviction or when Roger Goodell decides?
Yeah, well, look, when we're looking at this drug policy, and there are a number of issues that we're still fighting over, I can tell you this. We are not going to agree to a drug policy that in any way immediately punishes a player based on arrest. If there is a proposal of a policy where there is going to be some punishment, either you're deactivated or you're suspended, even if it's with pay, but if the trigger for that occurring is an arrest, we and our membership and the message from our players is that is a non-starter. And here's why. One, again, prosecutor for a very, very long time. The standard for arrest is probable cause. It is not conviction. The other thing that we can just be blunt about it, there are classes of people who are stopped and arrested by the police at a higher rate than other groups of people. That is just a fact. And if a young man or a young person gets arrested and then 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks, a year later goes to trial and gets acquitted, and we have a policy that's based on a person being punished when they get arrested, that's not only stupid, but you're subjecting a person to a punishment before we have run through something that we all call due process.
And that same thing would happen then with the domestic violence cases, I would assume.
Well, on domestic violence, that's going to be under commissioner discipline.
Okay.
And those cases, my understanding is those cases are going to be triggered when there is a finding of fact or an adjudication or a plea. So my understanding from the league is that those cases would only subject a player to punishment if there was a finding that he actually committed the crime of domestic violence.
So, for example, Lurch is a Niners fan. The guy in the Niners was arrested.
Ray McDonald.
There are certain accusations about what he did.
Right.
And their head coach actually said he's going to have even stricter policy. He's one and done, but he wants the due process first.
And those cases are going to fall into my understanding is those cases will fall into a due process box where we will either go through an adjudication by the criminal justice system or a factual determination of some way.
So he's not going to be suspended until he goes through the process.
Right.
And then he'll be facing 6 games? Is it 6 games for the domestic?
Plus or minus 6 games. If the 6 games is the target, if there's mitigating circumstances to take it less than 6 games, that's what's going to happen. If there's aggravating circumstances, it could be above 6 games.
When a team goes above and beyond, like a Harbaugh, who said, "Hey, look, I have a zero tolerance policy on this, provided that that's a conviction or whatever," and they go ahead and release them. Does the player have any recourse there?
Our players have every recourse. I mean, what we do as a union is we protect our players. If
the policy is 6 games, but they cut you might have something there, right?
Oh, absolutely. If we believe that due process has not been followed, we're going to protect our guys. I mean, we are not that far removed from the Bounty case, right? Yeah. Where all of you know that the league started out by vilifying a group of players, saying that they were a marauding group of thugs who went out of their way to hurt people for some sort of compensation, whether it was an attaboy or a sticker on your helmet or whatever. We found out later on that none of that was true, and the commissioner was reversed twice, including by the former commissioner. So we're not going to live in this world where we aren't going to protect the due process rights for our players. What concerns me, going back to the drug policy, is if the league wants to predicate or make a critical part of this drug policy a provision that you can be punished under this drug policy based on arrest, that is not going to work. Because to me, I'm a guy who was pulled over by the police a couple of times. never arrested, but also never charged with anything. I just happened to be in the wrong place, wrong time, probably driving the wrong car.
Yeah.
So to me, why would we ever?
They only knew who you were.
Well, I wasn't.
You weren't D. Smith then.
I wasn't D. Smith then.
I
I
got
was.
you.
Funny. I was a prosecutor then.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Where did Goodell come up with the 9 games for Alden Smith? Is that something that you guys are involved with at all, or he just says, all right, 9 games?
Well, Alden Smith was punished under the drug policy, under the old drug policy.
Okay.
So those were conditions that existed under the old drug policy.
That's right. It was a combination of personal conduct and
I was
substance.
going to say, because the airport incident was on top of that.
Correct.
But my understanding was that was kind of a negotiated thing. No.
It was discussed with us primarily because part of the suspension basis was under the drug policy, which is collectively bargained.
D, how much of a role do you personally take in helping out a guy like Josh Gordon from the Cleveland Browns? Obviously a troubled guy at this point in his career. We see the story this week. He's taking a job as a car salesman. For the Good year. for him. He's got to make some money.
He's
keeping himself busy, but how much do you personally step in, and do you counsel him, or is it something more on the team to help guide him along and hopefully get his career back on track?
Yeah, personally, I weigh into those cases that personally I have to weigh into. But the real strength of our union is a few years ago, based upon, I think, some of the best advice we ever received, a few of our player leaders said, hey, D, we need to make sure that the union has on staff a person who is a trained professional to deal with players who have all sorts of potential issues. So whether a player has a psychological, mental issue, we have trained experts to deal with them. If a player has an abuse issue, we have trained experts to deal with them. And over the past few years, I'm proud to say that when those issues arise, there are a team of people that we can put into play for any particular player, and the player doesn't have to pay for it. So I know that our staff has been there. The folks who deal with him on the team level, the folks who deal with him personally from our staff are there to support him.
Like
and that's
they
what we do.
can't have contact with him, right? The Browns at this point cannot with the Gordon example, but you guys can, and your people can.
Well, and that's one of the things that's been a little bit frustrating about a lot of these suspensions and penalties. We only talk about them in a punitive sense. Our union is there to support them when you guys don't see them on the field, when they don't show up in the fantasy stats. And I think that that's something that we really take a lot of pride in, is being there as a support network for players.
And in that vein, when you're trying to get some rehabilitate, I assume people, I mean, you want to punish them, but you also want to rehabilitate them and get them back into their life again. Why wouldn't you allow them to train at the facility? Why wouldn't you allow them to receive those benefits? I don't understand
we
that.
We negotiated that on behalf of Alden Smith. And Alden is now able to go back to the facility and work out with his team.
Keep him a part of the team.
He could be
keep
part of his support
self-esteem
network.
up.
So he can practice.
Let's go back to the issue. He can. Well, he can go back and be part of the workouts with his team. Yeah, I don't know about full practices. That's a relatively, we'll go back and check on that for you guys. But let's go back to the issue of DUIs for a second, right? There was a big clamor for increased discipline on DUIs from the league. In fact, when they did the domestic violence letter, Roger included it in the letter that said, we've wanted increased penalties for DUIs. The union has said no. I don't understand why we have to look at a social problem amongst our players in only a disciplinary vantage point. We came up a couple of years ago with a partnership with Uber.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody on air knows Uber. You guys all use Uber in DC. DUIs have gone down since we've put our partnership in place with Uber.
Good.
And so I don't really view these problems that we're talking about with players purely from a 6 games, 2 games, 4 games. What's the discipline going to be? We have to come up with a better way as a league and as a union to support players from avoiding those situations altogether.
Yeah. It's got to be a real eye-opener for Gordon. I mean, if he doesn't learn after this one, he might be a lost cause. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, look, the way we don't look at any individual player and set policy based on an individual player. The goal of the drug policy system is to rehabilitate and help a player get back to the field. The goal of any punitive system or us having rules is to make sure that hopefully these things don't occur in the first place. So to George's point, to our union's point, we don't look at any of this as purely in a punishment vein. And if we have to incentivize good behavior? Yes, we have to. But the goal is we want to educate our players. We want to demonstrate what's expected of them as men and as football players, and hopefully ensure that these things don't happen in the first place. And I know that the stories about when they happen and what kind of punishment they're going to get is what kind of drives the train some of these days. But the real goal is all of the things that happen outside of the public eye, the type of education that we're providing our players day to day in the locker rooms, the type of education that the league is providing on a day-to-day basis, and the type of education that the team is providing. But to me, to condition all of this in purely a punishment vein, I will tell you as a former prosecutor, it doesn't work. We changed, not we, but you saw a significant change in drug use when communities started using things like drug courts and community prosecution and community policing. Why? Because you partner incentivizing and you partner punishment with education and rehabilitation. That's what we want to do.
Another thing you guys are doing is you've got involved with the Georgetown Lombardi Cancer Center. Tell us about that.
You know, for me, this is my 4th year of being the chair of the Lombardi Cancer Dinner. It's something that is incredibly important to us. Obviously, Vince Lombardi, you can't say the words Vince Lombardi and not think football. But we also love the fact that when you think of Vince Lombardi, you think about the best comprehensive cancer treatment facility in the world. And here at Georgetown, the folks there do a wonderful job. My wife is a breast cancer survivor. There are people in this room I know where you can't go 2 steps without knowing someone who's either been a victim of the disease or successfully fought the disease. So I'm proud to chair that every year. This year's honoree is Stuart Scott from ESPN. Last year it was Larry Fitzgerald. The year before that it was Robert Kraft. So it's not only a great goal, but I have to tell you, it's the one dinner that I go to every year that's just fun. You go, you dance your feet off till you can't dance anymore. We raise a lot of money for cancer treatment, but it's also a way to remember exactly what's important.
You guys should bring a camera, by the way, to watch D dance at this.
I
thing.
know.
It's
pretty
ridiculous.
special.
Pretty
special.
Look, I'm gonna
I got
have
my money on him being a better dancer than you.
Yeah,
That's a
right.
stereotype.
Yeah, right.
I don't know about that.
I can't quite get the name
I don't think George would say
I
that.
can't get the
I'm
name
not
down.
giving up that easy. You know that one.
All right, guys, thanks very much for stopping by. And,
Thanks,
and
D.
you're welcome
George.
to be our first guest.
I mean, I would love to.
When we move to the
We'll be
DC
there.
spot, which we have no idea. They've been telling us the end of the year, but I don't even think they've hit one nail yet.
Hey, look, and I got to say, I love this show. Obviously grew up here. Fun to be a local guy and come and do this show with you every day. Great job, as always.
Well, thank you.
Nice
Thank
little
you.
shout out. Let's
Thank you.
enjoy it all.
Thank
All
you.
right,
It's
thank
always
Maybe we
a
can do
pleasure.
a show from your office again soon, too.
Let's do
Yeah,
that.
that's a
Hey,
good
look,
idea.
let's
We love doing that.
Well, hey, look, big game for my son's team today, so we'll have fun. But yeah, you guys come out. We'll do it anywhere you want.
Yeah.
I love that.
That was fun when we
All
did
right,
that.
coming up next, we'll talk to the Nationals manager, Matt Williams, on The Fan.